your goal is not enough.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Geek-A-Tech. First of all, I would like to thank you to all my viewers and subscribers for their love and their support. Today we are going to talk about test cases for API testing. We will see that how we can write the API test cases in BDD. There are various benefits of writing test cases in BDD. It will helpful for a non-technical person also to understand that what is happening for a particular test case or what kind of scenario we are going to test it. Okay, it will be helpful for a business PO. Business analyst to understand that what scenarios we have tested. As you know, the testing of an API is more on technical side rather than the functional side or from the behavioral side. But by writing the test cases for API in BDD format, it will be very helpful for us to demonstrate to the business or to the non-technical persons that what we have tested and what kind of testing we have performed and how APIs are behaving and how they are working. We can demonstrate this in a very simple uh, in a very proper manner when we write these test cases in BDD format. Okay, so today we are going to write this test scenarios which I have written over here. The first one, we will talk about the GET APIs, which works for fetching the data from database. Then second, we will talk about the put or patch for updating the records. Third, the post request for adding the new records in database. And fourth, the delete for delete records. Along with these four valid scenarios, we will talk about the couple of negative scenarios also, that how we can write test cases in BDD for the negative scenario when we test these APIs. Basically, these test cases I am going to demonstrate you are related to REST APIs. Okay, but you can leverage these test cases for testing the SOAP APIs also. You can change a little bit in that, and you can use them in your SOAP API testing also. So along with this, uh, which we are writing the test cases in BDD format. Why we should write our test cases in BDD? As you know, we are trying to demonstrate it to the business persons, we are trying to demonstrate to the non-technical persons. Along with that, there is one more reason to write the test cases in BDD for APIs, is that we can easily incorporate these test cases in automation test suite also. Okay, it will be very useful if the functional or manual test cases are written in BDD format. Then they can directly consume, or with very little effort we can consume them in automation test case. So it will help the automation tester also to cover the scenarios as much as possible with minimum efforts. And these formats are helpful in various frameworks like karate framework, where BDD style is directly manage to execute the APIs. Along with this, we can use Cucumber also for testing the APIs along with the rest assured. So this is also a one framework which is very useful for testing the APIs. So let's start with the first method, which is get method. So what does a get method do? Get method do, it's fetching the data from the database. Okay, so for writing the test case for a get method, let's suppose for an example, we have an API which fetch the student records from database based on student ID. Okay, so whenever we want to fetch any data from database, we need to pass certain parameters. Okay, based on them we can fetch the data, we can fetch the details from database. So suppose if we have as an example, I mentioned over here that if we want to fetch the student record from database based on their student ID, then how we can write BDD format test case for that. So let's start with that. Given get API is available for student details, when student ID as stud009 pass as query param and request submitted, then response receive as 200. Okay, and student details should be not null and response should be received in JSON format and details receive as below. Name XYZ, age 20, roll number 009. So now let's discuss this scenario. So here what we did, we perform given, then we perform when, then we verify things in then section. So in given, as you know, we write the prereqs, okay, the prerequisite for running any test case. So mostly we have written in the given part. So here what we have mentioned, that given get API is available for student details. Okay, again, the format which I am showing you, or the lines which I am demonstrating over here, is not a hard code rule, okay, that you should always written in such a manner. You can modify it as per your requirements also. Along with that, you can add more different lines in as per your requirement. Okay, so I'm just giving a very brief overview that how you can write the test cases for APIs. Okay, so when student is as student ID as stud009 pass as query param. Okay, so what this line will do, this line is perform an action. As you know that when we always provide the actions, that whatever actions we are going to perform, we should mention in when. So here what I have written is that student ID as stud009 pass as query param. So it's a very interesting point, that why I written query param. Again, it depends on our API's implementation, that for any variable or for any value, if how it is implemented, is it implemented as query param or is it implemented as a path param. Okay, so again, if your API says that okay, we are passing student ID as query param, then you need to mention it as query param. If it is passing as path param, then it will be good if you mention as path param. It is very important to mention these keywords, the path param or query param, because it will demonstrate that along with the technicality, it will demonstrate that yes, this is how we are passing the values in our API. This is how we are passing the parameters in our API. Okay, so if your API is getting value in query parameter, then you should mention query parameter. If it is taking value as a path parameter, then you mention it as a path parameter. Then we mention and request submitted. Then, so why we always write that in BDD? So in then we are providing the assertions. Okay, we are providing the expected result, what should be expected result. Okay, so here we have mentioned then response receive as 200. Okay, in case of get, we are getting 200 response. Okay, uh, whenever you are trying to fetch the data, if data is available in database, then you will always receive HTTP responses 200. Okay, and student details should be not null. Okay, so why I have mentioned this one, because suppose if my API is returning a set of data, and all the data which is related to student is it's a mandatory that it should contain all the details. Okay, so in such case should mention that it should not be null or blank. I can mention it or blank. Okay, so if I am trying to fetch the data from database for a particular student, then the details should always be there. It should not be null. Okay, it should not be blank. So I'm trying to verify this scenario also. So here what we are verifying till now, we have verified the response code, we have verified the not null check. Okay, in case of APIs we are verifying such things also. Then I have mentioned and response should be received in JSON format. As I am in what format I am expecting, I should mention over here. There might sometimes what happen in case of APIs, we are receiving data in a certain formats where we are getting response in zip file. Okay, where we are getting the responses as a Word document or as a CSV file also. Okay, it's depend on the implementation. So we should mention, we should also check, and we should mention them in our test case that what kind of response we are expecting when we receive the response from our API. Along with that, this is the normal details which I have mentioned, that name should be XYZ, age 20, roll number, blah blah blah. So these all steps we should take care when we write the Gate API test case for the REST APIs. Okay, and you can leverage this steps also for XML format if you are using the SOAP APIs. Then in such case you can leverage these steps also. I will try to create another video on that also, that how we can write the test cases for SOAP APIs also in BDD format. We will see the more details in that. Okay, so this is all about the Gate API. Now let's move towards the Put API. Okay, so now in Put API what we have to do, in example, need to update roll number of student. Okay, how we are going to write this scenario? Okay, again this is a positive scenario. Then how we are going to write this scenario? So now let's see how we can write it. Given put or patch, whatever API you are is the implementation is there, we can mention is that put or patch API is available for student details when student ID pass as query param in request for student posted 009 and roll number as 009 in payload and request submit. Then response receive as 200. Okay, and new roll number displayed as 009 in response body. Okay, so what I did here for verifying the update operations. So what we have written in given that we have put or a patch, whatever implementation you have, API is available for student details when student id passes query parameter in request for start 009. Okay, because when we are trying to update anything, then that record should be available in db first. So we are passing the student id in our request as a query parameter, and roll number as 009 in payload. Instead of this we can write, and we can mention it like that, and update roll number as 009 in payload. Payload means in body section, if our request is taking the values, most probably in case of put or patch or post request, we are providing the payloads. So in payload we should mention that what value we are providing, which we are going to update it. So I have mentioned as and update roll number as 009 in payload. So it will directly say that okay, we are passing value in payload for updating the roll number, and request submit. Then response receive as 200. Okay, and new roll number displayed as 009 in response body. So what we are expecting, we are expecting the http response code. Again, 200 okay is not a mandatory that it will you will get 200 okay. In such case there are many chances where implementation is done on based on our own requirement, where these responses can be changed. It can be 201 also. Okay, and new roll number displayed as 009 in response body. Why we have mentioned this one? Because when we fire the request, then we receive a response. Definitely we receive a response for that, and in that response we are going to verify that okay, this new roll number should be updated instead of the previous whatever roll number was there, but it should be updated, and value against the roll number should display as 009. Okay, so this is for the put or patch method. Now let's see in another example. As a part of post method, we are going to add a record. So for this, add student details in db. Okay, now we want to add the student details in our database. So how we can write the test case for that? So for that we can write given post API is available for student details when student details add in payload as name abc, age 27, 27, address xyz, and request submit. The id is also required. Then response received as 201 created, and response contains value of student as okay. So what I try to demonstrate over here is that we are going to add a new student detail in our database. So how we are going to write the test case for that? So given post API is available for student details. Okay, in the same manner we have written for the get and put or patch method. So it will not change that much. In when section we need to take care that how we should write the details which we are going to add in database. So what I have written that when student details add in payload as id, name, age and address. So here you can see that I mentioned payload because the details which we want to add in database, and when we are working with REST APIs in JSON format, then it will always contain values in payload and in key value format. Okay, so we have mentioned the values in same manner, key value format. So it will it is easy to understand that what value we are passing against which field. Then we have mentioned and request submit, then response received as 201 created. Okay, so when we perform a post operation, then it will always create a record in database, so we will receive an HTTP response as 201 for created, and the response contains value of a student as ID and name, age, the same as we have mentioned in when. Because what happened when we created something, then sometimes we are receiving the response values also. Sometimes it's again depend on the implementation, we are just receiving the code. Okay, we are just receiving the HTTPS code, but in many cases they are providing the details in responses also. Okay, so it's again depend on the implementation. You can make the changes in your test cases as per the implementation, that you are receiving details in your response or not, or you are receiving only HTTP response code. Okay, so 201 created will always be there. Okay, response code will always be there, because somehow you need to understand, you need to acknowledge that that API works properly or not. So in such case we will receive the response 201, and in case of we have the response details available with us, then we need to verify them also. Okay, so this is how you can work on post record. Now let's see how to work on the delete API. So for remove student details in database, so what we have to write, delete API is available for student details when student ID pass as query param in request for stud 007 and request submit, then response receive as 402. Okay, so again it depends on the what response code your developer has implemented, so you need to verify that. So what we try to do here is that we try to remove a student detail from the database. So for that we use the delete API. We mention the student ID as a query parameter, or if it is in path parameter, then you can mention the path parameter also as whatever the student ID we want to pass. We want to delete record, so we are going to pass over here. Then we request submit the request, then we will verify the responses for that. Okay, so this is another very simple example of performing the delete operations. So till now we saw how we can write the test cases for the APIs in BDD format, for get method, for put or patch method, for post, for delete. Okay, again this is no hard code rule which I have demonstrated here. It will be very helpful for you for writing your own test cases. If you follow the same steps, then it will easy to understand. You can leverage these steps for writing your own test cases. Okay, so again it's all depends on your implementation also. Okay, many times what happen, instead of response codes, you need to verify some special responses messages also. Okay, it's depend on the implementation for your application. There are many cases where special messages also you need to verify for certain scenarios, that suppose if you are trying to fetch the data from database and it is not available, then they can provide some specific messages that student record is not available or something like that. So again it's depend on your implementation. So I will demonstrate you one negative scenario also, which will clarify you that why we should write query param and path param in our test cases for the APIs. Okay, so let's see. uh, Fetch student details based on student ID, okay, but instead of ID we are going to pass student name. Okay, so as we are expecting that in our API a student ID should pass, so we can get the details from database for a particular student. But instead of that, if you are trying to pass the name, then what should happen? So simple case, it should not fetch the data from database. Okay, again, the response code which we'll receive is based on the implementation. What kind of implementation has been done? Are we passing the student ID as query parameter? Are we passing the uh, student ID as path parameter? Okay, because what happened in both cases we will receive the different responses. Okay, so let's see. Given get API is available for student details when we pass student ID as XYZ as query param and submit request, then okay, then response receive as 400 byte request. Okay, so what we try to achieve here, that we are try to pass the student ID which always contains the numeric value. Okay, but instead of that we are passing in a string. Okay, so in my API what implementation we have done, that student ID should always contain the numeric values. Okay, it should not contain a string value. So and implementation is done based on the query parameter. Okay, if I'm trying to pass the value as a query parameter, then it should give me a bad request response. Okay, whenever you are passing an invalid value and if that value is passed in query param, then you will receive a 400 bad request most of the times. Okay, and you need to verify here the message also, and message received as invalid value. So it this line can be changed as per the implementation, whatever the implementation you have done. So you will receive that message. Okay, so it's not a hardcore response that you will always receive that, but in case of bad request you will always get the invalid value for the particular field also. So in case of a query parameter you will receive 400, but what will happen if I try to pass it as path parameters? Okay, so when you try to pass the same value as a path parameter, instead of ID you are trying to pass it as a path parameter, then you will receive 404 not not found. Okay, again it depends on the implementation, but most of the cases which are what I saw is that in most of the implementation, when you are trying to pass a value as a path parameter, then you will get 404 instead of 400 byte request, because it is going to search the data based on the path which is going to which is going to prepare in your API. Okay, so it will try to fetch like that, so it will give you 404, but if it is passed as query parameter, then you will get 400 byte request. Okay, again it's not a hard code rule, it's vary from implementation to implementation also. Okay, so this is how you can write BDD test cases for API. This is basically for REST APIs. We will see for SOAP APIs also in my upcoming videos. It will be very helpful for you. So this is how you can write your test cases in BDD, and this is how this test case can be easily consumed in automation test suite also. by making some minor changes, or you can directly consume them also. Okay, again depend on how you are going to test your test cases, and how you are going to consume your test cases in automation framework, what kind of automation framework you are using. Again, it depends on all of the stuffs, but it will helpful for the automation tester also to consume your test cases. It will not take too much changes. Okay, if you write the test case in traditional way, then it will be very hard for the automation tester also to convert those test cases in BDD format and use them in their BDD frameworks, because right now most of the automation test cases are written in BDD format. They are using BDD frameworks for the automation, but not only for automation, it is for your own sake. When try to demonstrate that what you have tested, you can give a very clear picture to everyone, to business, to POs. Okay, or if someone is trying to review your test cases also, then it will be easy for him to understand that what is happening in your test case. Okay, so this is all about the test case writing in BDD for the APIs. So thank you, that's all for the day. Thank you very much for your support. Thanks a lot. If you're new to my channel, then please do like, share and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to press notification bell. Thank you.